Right, it's been revealed last month East Yorkshire could soon see the world's first veterans village. You'll have heard about that on Breakfast here on Radio Humberside. But could this also be a possible solution to homelessness? The £8 million project that would include around 60 homes and a rehabilitation and training centre is the idea of the Hull for Heroes charity. Well, research today by the University of York has highlighted how some former servicemen and women slip through the net and end up homeless after leaving the armed forces. Veterans housing charity Stoll and social housing provider Riverside have been working together to find a solution to this. And Hugh Owen, the CEO of Riverside Housing, is with us now. Hello, Hugh. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for hanging on this morning. What does the research show that you found? What have you found?
The research basically shows that whilst we've made a lot of progress in the past few years in increasing the supply of housing that is dedicated to veterans, and particularly veterans who are vulnerable for homelessness, there's a real sense that that housing is not necessarily sustainable in the long term, partly because of funding reasons, but also because I think there's a sense that there isn't enough joining up and linking up of services, including advisory services, and the sort of advice that people leaving the armed forces get to ensure that people get into that housing and indeed get out of that housing when they've settled down and they're ready to transition into new permanent accommodation.
So what is it about a veterans village then that would mean that this would work so much better?
Well, that's not a scheme that we're involved in as a housing association. Having said that, we are involved in a number of schemes which provide dedicated accommodation to veterans. And what we tend to find is that there are a significant number of veterans who are coming out of the forces and are struggling with housing. In fact, there are a number of veterans who come out of the forces, they do well for a number of years, and then for a whole series of reasons, they develop crises in their lives and they end up at our door. And we've got a real sense, and I know that other providers of veterans accommodation find this, that there's something really powerful about veterans coming together, living in adjacent accommodation and working through their housing problems together because of their shared experiences. And we find that the veterans who come through our door flourish and do really well in veteran-specific accommodation.
Because it's the sense of isolation when you leave the forces that can be a real problem for a lot of veterans, can't it?
I think it can be. Not for every veteran. We're talking about a minority of veterans here, and it's probably important to say that and put that in context. But I think, life in the forces is a form of institutionalisation. There is a dependency there. Obviously, the armed forces tend to provide accommodation, and people don't necessarily develop the life skills around paying bills and those sort of things. So when people come out into Civvy Street, as it's sometimes called, that process of transition can be difficult for some people, particularly if they've had traumatic experiences in the armed forces, or maybe they had life experiences before they joined the armed forces. But for a significant minority, they're finding the pathway into permanent secure housing very difficult, and a number of those, too many of those in fact, actually end up on the streets, sleeping rough, and they come into our services at that point. And I think we've got a real sense that we could do a lot better if we took a more preventative approach. Thank goodness we have got specialist accommodation, and it's great that Hull for Heroes are developing this concept of a veterans village. But in a sense, what we now need to turn our attention to is preventing that from happening in the first place by joining up the sort of advice that people leaving the armed forces get whilst they're still in the forces with the sort of services that we provide outside. I think there's a sense that there are some gaps there, and we can do far better than that by joining up and coordinating services in a more effective way.
Hugh, thank you. Fascinating to talk to you. Hugh Owen, the CEO of Riverside Housing, and that research today by the University of York has highlighted how some former servicemen and women slip through the net, end up homeless after leaving the armed forces. You can hear that it is a concern for Hugh and what they're planning to do about it.